really, really special honor this evening to be able to stand here and talk to you about our Senate candidate, Dr. Mehmet Oz. I was able to sit down with Dr. Oz. Again, thank you for being here this evening. I just want to talk a little bit about my relationship with Dr. Oz. And I call him Dr. Oz because that's how I was first introduced to him. And I have this little pet peeve that however I first introduced to somebody, that's how I address them. But anyhow, we met, it was probably January of this year. And I got to sit down with Dr. Oz. And I tell you what, there isn't anybody that cares more about making sure that Pennsylvania is represented very well in the United States Senate than Dr. Oz. We all care about our religious freedom here, don't we? Yeah. Yes, we do. You know who's going to protect it? Dr. Oz. He told me he would. In Pennsylvania's 12th congressional district, we care about our firearms, don't we? Yeah. You know what our motto is? And our motto is in PA 12? If you know how many guns you own, you don't own enough. I feel proud Actually, I said that line in West Texas when I was out with Jody Arrington, and he said if I had a dime for every time somebody said that in West Texas, he wouldn't have to raise money anymore. But that's how we feel. There are people in this country that don't believe there's conservatives and people that believe in our Constitution of Pennsylvania because they hear about Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. But you know what? Dr. Oz cares about our entire state. He cares about our religious freedom. He cares about our right to keep and bear arms. He cares about life. He cares about us. Not only as a doctor, but as a human being. And you heard the president talk about how we're the greatest danger to America. How rotten is that? Right? Yeah, we are not. We care about our republic, and that's what we have, a republic, and we care about it. And because we have a republic, we get the choice of 2 senators to represent our state. And I couldn't think of anybody better that's going to work any harder in representing Pennsylvania in the United States Senate to make sure that we, the people, take back our government. So I give to you our next senator from Pennsylvania, Dr. Mehmet Oz.
My wife, Lisa, is standing right over there. I've been talking about her a little bit. She comes along. Her mother is an ordained minister. So we got a big bowl at home. She went to seminary. So we can argue about subtleties later on. But for today, I'm going to talk a bit about my upbringing, what's going on in this race, why we're going to win, and what strategy we all need to follow together. Does that make a pretty reasonable plan? Yeah. You all think Washington's getting it wrong, I assume. Am I correct in that? They're getting it wrong on energy, they're getting it wrong on Second Amendment, they're getting it wrong with what they're doing with inflation, they're getting it wrong on schools, a lot of things. I want to drill down to why I think I can help with this. And I'm very specific. The doctors hear the problems, but we're supposed to listen to our patients, and then we actually don't just diagnose it, we fix it. So I'm going to carry it right through. First issue. My father was born on a dirt floor. Grew up in a farming family. And was told the only way out of where he was through scholarship. And so that's what he did. Studied hard, went to scholarship. And then the U.S. government was looking for young medical students to recruit to America because we didn't have enough. So he was brought to this country, and we lived the American dream, as you would see it in storybooks. Straight up. The deal was this. You work your tail off, you serve your fellow American, and you become an American. It's pretty straight up. Yeah. And most of America appreciated what the American dream was. I grew up believing that the American dream was real. I'm a living embodiment of it. But there's some people today in America, the far left, the fringe radical part of the Democratic Party, who don't believe in the American dream. And they're undermining what it stands for us. Now, when I was growing up, we grew up just south of Philadelphia. And the smartest thing I ever did in my life, by the way, was to marry Lisa 37 years ago in the house we live in now. It's a little church community called Bryn Athyn in Montgomery County. But when I was in med school at Penn, I was realizing that I wasn't being taught what to tell my patients to empower them. I wasn't taught nutrition or physical exercise, any of the things that you know are important for you being healthy. And I wanted to change that. So I became president of the student body, and I began talking about alternative medicine, medicine that empowers you to take charge of your own well-being. Years later, with Lisa, we started my show for that very reason. Because I'm a heart surgeon, and the people I was talking to about their disease, if they just known a few months earlier how to prevent it, they would have been able to take charge of their own well-being. And the show we ended up creating was the most popular show, not just in America, but the whole world, for 13 years, until I gave it up to run for this office. And I'll tell you one of the reasons I gave it up. COVID. What I saw during COVID was that if you mix medicine and politics, you get politics. Right? You get rid of medicine. And we saw it over and over again. We were told to follow the science, which is an anti-scientific statement. It actually undermines science to not be able to argue with it. And the weaponization of science, we couldn't argue and state what we believed in our heart was best for our society, hurt this country. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York had the worst 3 outcomes with COVID in the country. Outcomes that were made worse because my opponent in this race, John Fetterman, and others supported and advocated for positions that made no sense. I remember vividly saying that schools should be kept open. It didn't help our children that they were closed, quite the opposite, and it didn't help society that they were closed. You get canceled, you get crushed. No one wants to hear that. And yet they were keeping their schools open in Europe. In Europe, they were keeping the schools open in Asia. Other parts of the world were suffering, and they were able to keep it going. But we, because of bad leadership here in Pennsylvania, pulled back. But it wasn't just COVID. I saw it with energy policy, where this Green New Deal, which is a false lie of a theorem, right, cannot happen in the way it's stated in the timeline promised, instead was being used as an example of what we should aspire to. It's just not true. It can't be done. And it can't be done unless you're going to sell yourself to China. That might work. We're not interested in doing that, are we? No. Same holds true for gender in schools. I don't know what you're thinking. Boy, they argue things for you. Just hoping that you will. I only got one hand free. Thank you. So, when you talk about gender, the argument for why this coming year in Pennsylvania, there's going to be a gender-free day. I don't know if you know this. The Department of Education said, no boy, no girl, there's no difference. There's a fluid pathway. And they're going to start teaching that to kids as young as 3. The argument for why they're doing it is science. Where's the science? Quite the opposite. I've looked at this issue. There is no benefit of teaching a 3-year-old algebra, because they're not going to understand it. There's no benefit of teaching a 3-year-old about gender issues. It's going to confuse them. And you want to involve the parents in these discussions. But my opponent in this race, all in on what the teachers union wants. This is not what the teachers want. Teachers don't like this. But the unions are pushing for this stuff. Now, this brings me to my opponent. Now, many of you may realize this, but just as I was driving over here, I learned that he is pulling out of our first debate. Now, I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. The man has not answered a question in this campaign, this general campaign, not one, in an open setting like this, like we're going to do in a few minutes. He does not have a desire to debate me, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm a doctor. I understand he had a stroke. I would work with him. Whatever it takes to get him comfortable that he'll be heard appropriately, I'll try to do. But if that's not the reason, and the real reason is you don't want to defend your far-left radical positions, that's something that I cannot help you with. And the voters of Pennsylvania deserve to hear you, and deserve to hear both of us asking tough questions so you can decide. That's what democracy is built on. Do I have it right? So, since we've got, it looks like 400 or 300 people here, let's just do a mock debate right now. I'll pretend that I'm offering my solutions. We'll get his solutions out there, and we're going to just play it out. Issue number one, he believes that Joe Biden did not spend enough money. He went after him for not being willing to do the investments that were originally promised. He actually said, if you like Joe Manchin, don't vote for me, because Joe Manchin is too conservative. And I'm thinking he wanted to work with his own party. Now we have 40-year high inflation that hurts farmers a lot, because it's already a cyclical business. You make it a lot worse by adding the overhead of fuel costs and all the other expenses, including fertilizer, and we're left decimating a vital part of the Pennsylvania economy. 10% of the economy is agriculture, as you know. GT, who was up there, has been my mentor on this stuff, teaching me from day one with Fred about the issues that are important to farmers. And since my dad was a farmer, I get it. I understand how risky life is when you don't have the basic standards like fuel prices. Bringing up fuel prices, my opponent in this race believes fracking is a stain on Pennsylvania. That's his phrase. That's dismissive of all these people who make their living in the energy business. Plus, it elevates prices, which is 1/3 of inflation. Plus, it compromises our national security. I'm an all of the above guy. I want every form of energy we can make in Pennsylvania. It will allow us to reduce inflation, allow manufacturing to become affordable in Pennsylvania, so our kids stay home. Right? Instead of to go up, they go out. Issue number 3. It's not critical here yet, but it's coming. Crime. My opponent wants to release 1/3 of all prisoners in Pennsylvania. Does not believe in life sentences. Is confused about what would actually mandate that. Doesn't think that we should have prohibitions against drugs. In fact, he wants to legalize all drugs, not just marijuana, all the drugs. And he wants what's called heroin-safe injection sites. Whatever that is. And here's the part that gets me. This experiment is already being done in Philadelphia. It's a catastrophe. The most murders ever in the city of brotherly love. I lived in West Philly when I was in med school and Center City. I know that they used to be safe streets. You can't walk in those streets anymore. But even on top of that, it dismisses the value of our police. Now, I was in Erie a few weeks ago with Doug Mastriano, some others on that chart, getting the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police. And I was sitting there with hundreds of officers who are leaders in their communities, arguing why I'm the best candidate. Vetterman didn't show up. And a woman in the front row got up and said, African-American lady who's head of the Capitol Force in Harrisburg, she said, I'm going to tell you something. John Fetterman treats me and my team like we're something stuck to the bottom of a shoe when you walk out of the dog park. And the ripple through the crowd was audible. It was a unanimous endorsement. If you're dismissive of police, if you don't respect the risks of running towards problems, if you're across the board arrogant enough to think they don't matter, you're going to hurt law enforcement. And we're witnessing that across the Commonwealth, and it will seep in here if we're not careful. Fourth topic, the border. He believes we should have an open border with sanctuary cities, which is what we have right now in America. Millions of illegal immigrants, forever changing the face of this country, and we didn't get a vote in it. Right. There's a covenant we have with our government. We follow the rules, pay our taxes, the government protects our border. They're not abiding by their half of the deal. So why should we abide by our half? Right? They got to hold them accountable. Now, my opponent has taken these positions with no rational way of deciding what to do with it. I'll tell you what I'll do. Close the border. No one comes across unless they meet asylum criteria. They wait in Mexico until we decide. Yep. And then we open up legal immigration. Yep. Right? I travel to farm shows. I travel to farms. I bought a bunch of, I love the 4-H clubs, don't you? Yeah. I own a bunch of goats now. But these young folks, you just see them picking up the values of their parents and grandparents, the energy of the community, the reward they get of having raised these animals, and it allows them, of course, to pay bills and go to school. It's exactly what you want in America. And when I go around and visit the farms themselves, they're understaffed. Many of you are in the farming industry. It's critical. We need to have legal immigrants who are allowed to work with appropriate visas in our farms. We also need people who went to higher education, can be engineers, doctors, whatever we need to make sure our society is adequately staffed. We can't have that if our borders are porous. And even worse, and this is typical typical, the far left radical side like John Fetterman, they think they're caring. They care about caring. When you open the border, you fund cartels. Cartels run human trafficking operations. They make money. What do they do with the money? They buy narcotics, fentanyl from China. Comes across the border with the people. We had 100,000 Americans die last year from fentanyl overdose. 100,000. That's 4 times more than died from COVID under the age of 50 last year. It's just unimaginable that we would tolerate that. I'm a doctor. I fix things. I used to fix hearts. Every single one that I could save. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to allow caring about caring, a soft position on the border, hurt people, all people. It's a humanitarian crisis. I'm going to close that border, make sure it's secure, and ensure fentanyl production is no longer coming into America untethered and killing our young ones. There's 2 more topics. Number 5, education. I touched on it briefly. I want parents' values reflected in the school system. My opponent, John Fetterman, argues no, it's going to be public school. He's heavily endorsed by the teachers union. Where do his kids go to school? Private school. It's the hypocrisy. There are state representatives in Philadelphia who vote against charter schools for those poor kids who need help, and yet their kids go to those schools. I see this all the time. It's intolerable. I want parents to have their values reflected in the schools and to have choice of where their kids go to school so that they can go to the best school, public, private, parochial, whichever school suits their needs best. And finally, I'm a doctor. Number 6 is healthcare. I believe in affordable healthcare for all. My opponent, who's close to Bernie Sanders on this and everything else, they endorsed each other. And they actually call each other the 2 most progressive candidates in America. He thinks we should abolish all private health care. That's a catastrophe. And yet he doesn't understand that. He's just fine throwing the Twitter bomb out, just trying to make a mess of things without any real policy. So I'm going to paint this picture really clearly. We are competing against the most radical candidate to run for this office in Pennsylvania ever. The rest of the country is staring at us in disbelief. So is the Democratic Party. They can't believe he's their nominee. They're looking at a guy who is the most radical candidate, and I've counted a bunch of his positions, and yet he will not debate. He runs from the problem. He didn't campaign hard in the primary. He's not out at all right now. We have to hold him accountable. And we're going to do that together. Because if you call 10 people today when you leave here and say, I heard Oz, I'm more convinced than ever that we're going to win this race, and here's what you got to know about Fetterman. We win this race. All we've got to do is make sure people stay on message that he's radical. He's going to try to mess it up in any way he can. He's going to muddy the waters, talking about houses and foods and issues about me that he's going to manufacture, make me think that I'm something that I'm not. It doesn't matter. None of those things affect your life. They're purposely done to distract you. And what you care about is who's going to address those 6 things I just walked through. If we would have had him a debate, he would have had to have answered for those questions, and he would not have been able to. If you keep people focused on those issues, we win this election hands down. Now, along the way, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tight election. They're 50% with us and 50% with him. We're going to have to pull a couple people over, or they're going to try to steal people from us. Keep our base strong, bring a couple of their team over. There are a lot of conservative Democrats who don't like the far left radical positions of Fetterman. They don't like the hoodie. They don't like the shorts. They don't like what he stands for.
Word's yours.
Yeah. But we need to make sure that we're heard and listened to. And the only way for that to happen is for me to run to my ads and run my campaign. I am tireless. I've done probably 185 events over the summer. He's done, I think, 3 or 2.5. Never taken a question. Not taking a single question. Hold him accountable. Tell your friends, if he won't debate, he's not eligible to be a senator from Pennsylvania. Force him, flush him out, to actually deal with the issues that affect you at your kitchen table. That's what a Senate candidate should do. Not hide behind his allies in a hoodie, in a home that in a bedroom or a basement that he's hiding in, because that tactic is not going to work again. Work for Joe Biden, it won't work again. All right, 1 or 2 questions. Let me help it out. Kurt, is that okay? May I take a question or 2?
52 states packing the courts.
Thank you for reminding me. A few of the promises that Fetterman has made. He believes that we should abolish the filibuster. Which, I'll tell you the problem with that is, if the Democrats have control, they'll take us so far off, you'll get back on the road. He wants to pack the court. He wants to change the constitution of the court in order to put more people that he nominates in there and destroy a very important part of our government. He wants to include more states. Who decides? He'll decide. Again, this man is radical, not just in his policies, but because he's never actually worked in his life. You all know he grew up in privilege. Parents were paying for everything till he's in the mid-40s. He doesn't know what it's like to sign the front and the back of a check. He's not gone through that process. So he doesn't understand how damaging this would be to our country. And I, for one, as a proud Pennsylvanian, am not going to let a man go to Washington to hurt our nation. Certainly not on our dime. I'm getting these beautiful questions from your leader here. He got a job as a part-time mayor, $150 a month. But his first real job is lieutenant governor of the state of Pennsylvania. Hello! Which is shameful. Shameful that we would roll the dice and bring someone into that position who doesn't seem to be qualified to do anything. And to promote him when he hasn't shown up for work, because he doesn't go to work. He didn't show up for work as mayor either. That's not the kind of person we can afford to have in Washington. The reality is so clear, so crisp in the eyes of people who see it, that the only way he wins is because of the overwhelming media onslaught that chills Republicans and convinces us we're not going to win. Because the opposite is true. And I'll tell you an example. There were a lot of rumors last week that the National Party was pulling out of Pennsylvania and Georgia and Ohio. So I'm thinking, that's strange, no one told me. And I'm listening to this, and finally I went on a show and someone said, why are they pulling out? And I said, let's just be clear about this. I'm getting $34 million from the National Party. That's as much as they could possibly invest. That's how much they know we're going to win. Wow. They're not throwing money at this hoping it works out. They know we're going to win. And so don't believe the media. When they try to pretend that all the leaders of the Republican Party are fighting, it's a lie. When they try to pretend that there's a question mark about whether they're going to support us, in Pennsylvania, I'm telling you personally, it's a lie, but it's also a lie in Georgia, it's a lie in Ohio, it's a lie in Nevada, it's other states like ours, where there's the same game plans being used. Don't let people trick you into thinking that our party's in trouble, because the opposite is true. We're going to win the House, we're going to win the Senate, and we're going to do it with you. God bless. Let me ask you a question. Let me come on here. Put your hands up, you can ask personal health questions if you want. I got a question way back here. Is it a personal health question? You sure?
Where do you stand on the Second Amendment and gun rights?
Oh, I love this. I think Fred brought this up. I don't actually know how many guns I have. The last I checked, I had 12. I have a concealed carry. And I've been very clear. Actually, I'll tell you, when Ted Nugent endorses you, and Rick Perry, and the NRA says you're doing a good job, I feel pretty comfortable. But I'm very well aware of what the Second Amendment's about. It's about our constitutional right to bear arms. And if you're following the law, you're going to bear arms. And if you're not following the law, you shouldn't have a gun. It's pretty straight up, and I think most of us agree with that. And I wish you all the best, making sure you take care of your firearms. Okay. All right, next question.
What about these 87,000 IRA? I think they're coming after guns, not taxes.
So the IRS, there's 80,000 IRS agents now. So they're more than doubling the force, giving them guns and cars. And I'm thinking, what kind of people are they going to get that quickly to serve that very important job? And who are they going to audit? Because the people they're going to audit are people in this room. That's who they're going after. And they're going to fund this with our tax dollars. I'll give you an example. That's a good example of what frustrates me, and taxes are becoming a problem. But I'm also frustrated they gave away $10,000 to people who didn't pay their student loans. Because what about many of you, if you either couldn't go to graduate school or college because you didn't have time or that didn't have the money or the interest, you're now paying for those guys. And if you went to college and paid back your debt, you're a fool for having done it now because you could have gotten it for nothing, right? So yes, you have plumbers and farmers paying lawyers' education bills. It makes no sense, yet they're very comfortable. They are so happy. Fetterman loved it when that got passed. They think they're gonna buy the election. They think they're gonna pay people $10,000. People who aren't going anywhere, because they have debt they shouldn't have it anymore. They're gonna pay them to become Democrats. And I know there are a lot more Republicans out there who are upset because it's wrong. I still remember the last day I tore my little coupon out of my book. When I went to college, I had debt. I had to pay it off, and I was so proud when I paid that off. It makes you feel like you can control your future. But you don't want someone else flying your field.
I just want you to know, I've been Republican since I'm 21. I hardly ever miss an event. You have grown the largest crowd ever at a Republican event in Clinton County. Oh my God.
Well, I'm going to team up here. I'm going to get a picture. Everyone to stand tall. I'm going to sit right here. I'll blend right in perfectly. And we're going to get a team photo. We can send it out. Fred, come on over here. You know what? Do me a favor. No. You sit there. Fred, you sit next to me. I'll sit here. Sit down. Sit that chair right there. We're going to take a wide shot. It's Ryan up there. Signal, by the way. Thumbs up. Do you know how to turn your airdrops on your phone? Anyone who has airdrop on their phone, have airdrop it to you. We'll have a bunch of them. When you post it, here's airdrop on. When you post it, we have 13 million people on social media. Just post to us and we'll keep posting back. It's how we make noise. God bless you for letting me intrude on your evening. This is unbelievable. Congratulations.